In the heart of 17th century India, at the zenith of the Mughal Empire's power and splendor, a personal tragedy struck that would ultimately give rise to one of the greatest architectural achievements the world has ever seen. The year was 1631, and the Emperor Shah Jahan, sovereign of a vast and culturally rich dominion, lost the love of his life. His wife, Arjuman Banu Begum, better known to history as Taj Mahal. She had been more than a consort. She was his confidant, his advisor, and the mother of many of his children. In a life filled with ceremony, conquest, and courtly responsibility, she was his emotional anchor. Her death during childbirth, delivering their 14th child in the city of Burhanpur, left the emperor devastated. According to accounts from contemporary chroniclers, Shah Jahan secluded himself for days, refusing food, music, or the presence of his ministers. It is said he emerged with white hair and a face prematurely aged by sorrow. From this raw grief was born an idea, an audacious, unprecedented vision to honor Mumtaz's memory with a structure that would stand for eternity. It would not be a simple tomb, nor a mere display of royal wealth. It would be a testament to love beyond life, an architectural expression of devotion, and an echo of paradise on earth. In the traditions of Islamic and Persian funerary architecture, tombs were often built to reflect notions of the afterlife, as described in the Quran: gardens, rivers, light, and symmetry. Shah Jahan, a patron of the arts, and an emperor known for his love of poetry and aesthetics, envisioned something that would transcend all previous forms. The memorial had to be a cosmic embodiment of heaven itself. From the outset, this was more than an imperial project. It was a personal mission. The emperor called upon his best architects, engineers, astronomers, artisans, and calligraphers. Delegates were sent across the empire and beyond to source materials, labor, and inspiration. A committee of architects was formed, with Ustad Ahmad Lahouri later recognized as the chief figure in the design and execution. Every detail, shape, material, proportion, position, would be scrutinized to align with theological symbolism, natural harmony, and artistic perfection. But long before the foundation was laid or marble was carved, there was grief, and from that grief came vision. In that moment of loss, the seeds of the Taj Mahal were sown, not as a triumph of empire, but as the physical manifestation of a broken heart seeking peace through beauty. This chapter in history also reminds us that human emotion, when intertwined with resources and vision, can produce wonders that surpass their time. The Taj Mahal was not born from a committee's directive or an architect's ambition. It was born from a vow whispered beside a dying wife. The vow was simple but heavy, that she would never be forgotten. That vow became the guiding principle for everything that followed. The Mughal court, already a well-oiled machine of administration and artistry, shifted its gears toward fulfilling this imperial dream. Farmans, royal decrees, were dispatched across the subcontinent and beyond, demanding the most skilled artisans and the finest materials be delivered to Agra. The empire's resources were diverted to what would become one of the most expensive and logistically complex construction projects of its era. Historical accounts vary in their estimates of cost, but some sources suggest a sum equivalent to nearly $1 billion today. That staggering figure, however, still fails to capture the true scale of the human, logistical, and creative efforts involved. From the first conception of the project, the emperor demanded that the Taj Mahal not only reflect the divine, but outlast empires. The mausoleum was to represent Jannah, the paradise described in Islamic tradition. It was to be a mirror of the universe, designed with such symmetry and proportion that even its imperfections would appear intentional. It would integrate light and shadow, geometry and garden, water and wind, all the elements of creation unified in a single, breathtaking vision. The idea of combining a tomb with a paradise garden was not new in Islamic culture. What set the Taj Mahal apart was the unprecedented scale, precision, and lyrical beauty with which this vision was executed. The name itself, Taj Mahal, is believed to be a shortened form of Mumtaz Mahal, meaning crown of the palace. It also evokes an image of divine coronation, a crown in marble, placed atop the brow of the earth. But names only tell part of the story. To understand the majesty of the Taj Mahal, one must return to its emotional core. Shah Jahan's vision wasn't solely driven by legacy or dynasty. It was the attempt of a mortal man to immortalize love. And so, the plans began. This was no ordinary construction. It was a metaphysical exercise. Astronomers were consulted on the positioning of the site in relation to celestial bodies. Astrologers provided auspicious dates for major milestones. The entire enterprise took on the feel of a sacred ritual, performed over years, with each layer added not just by hand, but by heart. In the Mughal tradition, architecture served both as expression and declaration. Forts symbolized power, mosques symbolized faith, but a tomb, especially this tomb, was meant to symbolize transcendence. Here, love met legacy. Here, the physical met the eternal. The site for this grand structure would need to be chosen with extreme care. The Yamuna River, flowing along the north of Agra, held both practical and spiritual significance. Its cooling breeze, its clear reflections, and its link to ancient sacred geography made it ideal. The river would not only provide water for the gardens and workers, it would become a reflective mirror for the mausoleum itself, allowing it to appear as though floating between worlds. The plan was not just to build a structure, but to craft an experience. Visitors would enter through a monumental red sandstone gateway, walk through meticulously designed gardens, and slowly approach the marble masterpiece. The mausoleum would not reveal itself all at once. Instead, it would emerge gradually, revealing layers of symmetry, calligraphy, and form, just as love reveals itself through time, grief, and memory. Thus began one of the most ambitious construction efforts in history. From grief came concept. From concept came design. And from design came a legacy that would, for centuries to come, stir the hearts of millions. The Taj Mahal was no longer just an idea. It had become destiny, carved in white stone. The Taj Mahal may appear to the casual viewer as an act of pure inspiration, an emotional outpouring of marble and light. But behind its poetic form lies a meticulous and complex design process involving architects, mathematicians, astronomers, engineers, and artists. It was not only built for beauty, but forged with an almost obsessive pursuit of perfection, symmetry, proportion, and harmony. The vision of Shah Jahan was only the spark. Its execution required brilliance across disciplines and borders. At the center of this grand collaboration stood Ustad Ahmad Lahori, widely believed to be the chief architect. Though historical records rarely place a single name above such a collective effort, many contemporary sources, including Mughal court chronicles, identify him as the mastermind who translated Shah Jahan's vision into physical form. An Indian of Persian descent, Lahori embodied the synthesis of the cultural, mathematical, and architectural traditions that defined Mughal aesthetics. But this was no solo endeavor. The design and construction of the Taj Mahal required the coordination of a large guild of specialists. Historians estimate that more than 37 master craftsmen were directly involved in planning stages, alongside thousands of supporting artisans. These experts were gathered from across the empire and beyond. Calligraphers from Shiraz, mosaicists from Bukhara, dome builders from Samarkand, stonecutters from Rajasthan, and inlay artists from the Deccan. Some were household names in their disciplines, others anonymous artisans whose legacy lives on in the marble they shaped. The guiding principles of the design came from a deeply rooted architectural tradition, a blend of Persian, Central Asian, Indian, and Islamic influences that sought to embody divine perfection through geometry, symmetry, and calligraphy. Mughal architecture had long synthesized these traditions, but the Taj Mahal would elevate them to a realm previously unimagined. At the heart of the design philosophy was the concept of symmetry, not merely for aesthetic appeal, but as a reflection of cosmic balance. The Taj Mahal is a masterpiece of bilateral symmetry. Every major element has its mirrored counterpart: the minarets, the water channels, the flanking buildings, even the trees in the garden. This mirror-like balance is meant to symbolize divine order, a visual representation of the perfection found in creation. The central dome, one of the most iconic elements of the Taj Mahal, reflects another philosophical concern: the celestial. Rising to a height of 73 meters, 240 feet, the dome represents the sky, the heavens arching over the earth. Its bulbous form, inspired by Persian and Timurid domes, was carefully calculated to appear both massive and graceful. Topping it is a gilded finial that combines Islamic and Hindu decorative elements, again reflecting the cultural synthesis of the empire. This desire to harmonize opposites, earth and heaven, power and delicacy, mortality and eternity, permeates the entire design. The mausoleum is flanked by two symmetrical buildings, a mosque on the west and a jawab, a building for architectural balance, on the east. Though the jawab is not used for prayer, it mirrors the mosque exactly, preserving the structural symmetry essential to the complex's visual philosophy. But symmetry alone was not enough. The designers imbued every inch of the Taj Mahal with sacred geometry. Mathematical ratios, derived from Quranic cosmology and Persian design manuals, governed the structure's proportions. For example, the width of the base platform and the height of the main dome maintain a 1-to-1 ratio, a deliberate echo of the Islamic belief in unity and balance. Even the dimensions of the arches, corridors, and entryways were fine-tuned to create an evolving experience of scale. As one approaches the Taj Mahal, it appears to grow larger at a deceptive rate, an effect created by the narrowing perspective of the path and the calculated height of the gateway. This manipulation of visual perception was intentional, to inspire awe, to prepare the mind for contemplation. At a deeper level, this architectural language conveyed spiritual meaning. The Taj Mahal was designed not just as a tomb, but as an interpretation of Jannah, the Islamic paradise. The Charbagh layout, the garden divided by 4 water channels, represents the 4 rivers of paradise, described in the Quran. The central axis points north toward the Yamuna River, which serves not only as a boundary, but as a metaphysical extension of the garden, an eternal horizon. One cannot overstate the importance of light in the design philosophy. The Taj Mahal interacts with natural light like a living organism. At dawn, it glows pink. By noon, it turns milky white. At dusk, it shines golden. Under a full moon, it shimmers like silver. This luminous transformation is no accident. The Makrana marble used in its construction was selected for its high calcite content, which refracts and reflects light in dramatic ways. Combined with finely polished surfaces, the effect is one of constant visual renewal. Inside the mausoleum, light continues to play a central role. The inner chamber, housing the symbolic cenotaphs of Mumtaz Mahal and Shah Jahan, is dimly lit, relying on filtered natural light entering through delicate marble screens, jali. The play of shadow and illumination enhances the atmosphere of sanctity and reverence. Above, the central dome's hollow interior generates soft echoes, amplifying the sounds of prayers, footsteps, or whispered reflections. Another key design element was the use of calligraphy, not merely decoration, but architectural guidance. Verses from the Quran were meticulously inscribed by Amanat Khan Shirazi, the imperial calligrapher, using black marble inlaid into the white surfaces. The calligraphy grows in size as it ascends the arched entrances, an ingenious optical illusion that maintains uniform readability from the ground. These inscriptions invite visitors to reflect on life, death, and the divine, guiding their journey not only physically, but spiritually. The Taj Mahal also pushed the boundaries of construction technology. The architects had to solve problems never before encountered at such scale. The central dome, for instance, is actually a double dome, a clever solution to achieve both an imposing external silhouette and a harmonized internal space without disrupting acoustics or aesthetics. Ventilation systems, load distribution techniques, and moisture control were all addressed through innovation. Underground chambers and hollow spaces allowed heat to dissipate. Marble surfaces were polished not only for visual elegance, but to protect against weathering. Precision tools were created to ensure the alignment of minarets, which were deliberately tilted slightly outward to protect the tomb in case of collapse, an early form of seismic design. What makes the design even more astonishing is the speed of its completion. While the full complex took around 22 years to finish, the mausoleum itself was largely completed in just 8 years. A feat that speaks not only to the workforce's discipline and size, but to the clarity and effectiveness of its architectural leadership. The design of the Taj Mahal is not merely the sum of its parts. It is a statement, a philosophical, spiritual, and emotional assertion carved into stone, crafted through intellect and feeling alike. It is the confluence of empire and intimacy, of geometry and grief, of heaven and earth. As one walks through the gates, along the watercourses, and finally stands before the luminous dome, one doesn't merely see the work of architects, they feel it. The Taj Mahal is architecture as language. It speaks of love, eternity, symmetry, and the divine. And though centuries have passed, its message remains clear. True beauty requires both vision and discipline. To build a monument that would endure for eternity, the builders of the Taj Mahal had to go far beyond ordinary materials. They had to collect the finest substances from across the known world, stones that glistened in the sun, marbles that radiated inner light, and gemstones that could reflect divinity itself. The construction of the Taj Mahal was as much an act of imperial logistics as it was of architecture. Every slab of marble, every carved petal, and every shimmering inlay passed through an astonishing supply chain that reflected the vastness of the Mughal Empire's influence. At the heart of the Taj Mahal's material grandeur is Makrana marble, a luminous white stone quarried from the dry hills of Rajasthan, over 400 kilometers from Agra. Known since antiquity for its quality and brilliance, this marble was chosen not only for its beauty, but for its durability and light-reflective properties. Even today, Makrana marble stands apart from other varieties. Its high calcium content allows it to withstand weathering, and its crystalline structure makes it almost glow under sunlight or moonlight. To move thousands of tons of marble from the quarries of Makrana to the banks of the Yamuna River was a monumental task. It required armies of laborers, caravans of oxen and camels, and countless elephants fitted with custom harnesses. During monsoons, sections of the marble were floated along rivers. The entire operation became a logistical ballet involving engineers, traders, surveyors, and transport captains who coordinated one of the most impressive material movements in pre-industrial history. But marble was only the canvas. The artistry of the Taj Mahal lies in its astonishing inlay work, or pietra dura, a decorative technique involving the fitting of semi-precious stones into marble to create intricate floral patterns, geometric designs, and calligraphic motifs. This technique, originally developed in Renaissance Italy, was brought to India through Persia and refined by Mughal artisans into something completely unique. More than 28 types of precious and semi-precious stones were used in the construction of the Taj Mahal: jasper from the Punjab, jade and crystal from China, turquoise from Tibet, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, amethyst from Iran, carnelian from Arabia, onyx and sapphire from Sri Lanka, coral from the Red Sea. Each stone had to be sourced, cut, polished, and shaped by hand, then inserted into tiny cavities, chiseled with painstaking precision into the marble surface. The process of inlaying required master artisans, many of whom were specialists in only one kind of stone or motif. The smallest pieces were no larger than a grain of rice, and the tolerance for error was virtually non-existent. This fusion of color and material created a kind of optical alchemy. The white marble, soft and serene by day, would come alive with vibrant patterns as the sun moved across the sky. At night, under moonlight, the inlaid stones would dim to shadowed hues, as if sleeping, just like the lovers interred beneath them. To support this level of craftsmanship, Shah Jahan established workshops and artisan quarters near the construction site. These were not temporary tents, but purpose-built facilities designed for engraving, polishing, tool-making, and training. Some artisans lived on site for years, sometimes decades, becoming so specialized in their craft that their skills were considered sacred knowledge, passed down only within families. The wood used for scaffolding, tools, and internal structures came from various sources. Teak and deodar, known for their strength and resistance to pests, were imported from southern India and the Himalayan foothills. The scaffolding itself was said to be massive enough to match the monument in size. Some accounts describe it as a wooden mountain. Brick and mud scaffolds were also used, particularly around the domes and minarets, allowing builders to work at dangerous heights with some degree of safety. Iron clamps, nails, and support rods were forged by blacksmiths on site. While modern visitors see only the white gleam of marble, underneath lies a framework of support systems, iron dowels, lead joints, and load-distributing bases that reflect a deep understanding of material science centuries ahead of its time. Even the mortar used in the Taj Mahal was no ordinary mix. It included traditional materials such as lime, sand, and water, but also ground seashells, jaggery, unrefined sugar, and even pulses, believed to increase the longevity and adhesiveness of the mixture. Some of these ingredients acted as early binding agents and waterproofing measures, allowing the structure to endure centuries of rain, flood, and temperature fluctuations. To ensure uniformity of supply, the Mughal administration established a chain of supply hubs, caravansaries, and checkpoints between the various source regions and Agra. These routes were patrolled and protected by imperial guards. Every shipment, whether a slab of marble, a crate of lapis lazuli, or bundles of timber, was logged and inspected for quality. The craftsmen, too, formed part of this living supply chain. Teams were rotated based on need. Calligraphers would finish their work and be replaced by masons, who were then followed by inlay artists and finally polishers. This dynamic progression kept the work moving continuously, with no single phase halting the overall rhythm. The labor force that executed this monumental task was massive. Contemporary accounts suggest over 20,000 laborers and artisans were employed at various stages of the project. Their work was coordinated by foremen, guild masters, and imperial overseers, many of whom were appointed directly by Shah Jahan and reported back to the court. To house and feed such a large population, the builders created an entire city around the Taj Mahal's construction site. Markets, kitchens, dormitories, and even mosques were established. It became a temporary metropolis, devoted entirely to a single task: to make stone sing. While much is known about the materials and where they came from, far less is known about the names of those who shaped them. The Taj Mahal, for all its glory, remains largely anonymous. The humility of the artists and the absence of signature reflect a different philosophy of creation, that the work was for God and love, not for self. Yet their legacy lives in every petal, every polished edge, every line of script. The materials they handled, marble, jade, coral, turquoise, were only lifeless things until touched by their hands. It is their silent mastery that gives the Taj its voice. Even centuries later, conservationists marvel at the material's resilience. Despite the passage of time, pollution, and millions of visitors, the Taj Mahal remains remarkably intact. Its colors fade and glow with the seasons, but its strength is unshaken. The choices made in its construction, of what to use and how to use it, were not only aesthetic, they were eternal. What Shah Jahan sought was not a tomb, but a memory cast in mineral, and the materials chosen ensured that this memory would endure. Beneath every enduring monument lies something far less glamorous than domes, carvings, or inlay, a foundation. And in the case of the Taj Mahal, the foundation was no mere base. It was a feat of engineering, so ahead of its time that even modern architects continue to study it with awe. For all its poetic symbolism and luminous beauty, the Taj Mahal is also a marvel of structural science, an audacious response to nature's most stubborn limitations. The Yamuna River gave the Taj its spiritual aura and picturesque setting, but it also presented a significant engineering dilemma. The soil near riverbanks, particularly in the Indo-Gangetic plain, is alluvial, a soft, water-saturated mixture of silt, sand, and clay. In other words, it is prone to shifting, compression, and waterlogging, all of which threaten the long-term stability of any large structure, let alone one weighing more than 80,000 tons. How does one build something permanent on something impermanent? The Mughal engineers, informed by centuries of Central Asian, Persian, and Indian building knowledge, responded with inventive brilliance. They designed a multi-layered foundation system that combined depth, weight distribution, and water management in a way that remains remarkably effective nearly 400 years later. The first step was to excavate to a depth that reached firmer soil strata. Reports suggest nearly 50 feet in some areas. Then, in a move that foreshadowed modern earthquake-resistant construction, they constructed a series of well foundations, vertical, cylindrical shafts dug deep into the earth and filled with stone, rubble, and mortar. These wells acted like caissons, providing both vertical support and flexibility. They allowed the monument to settle gently without cracking and adapted to seasonal moisture changes in the soil. This system was further reinforced by an elevated platform, a massive square plinth of compacted earth, red sandstone, and mortar, upon which the mausoleum and its ancillary structures were built. The platform lifted the Taj Mahal above flood levels, protected it from erosion, and created a sense of grandeur, making the monument appear to rise from the earth like a vision. The surface of the plinth was precisely leveled using early forms of surveying tools, plumb lines, sighting instruments, and calibrated water levels. A perfectly flat base was critical for the structure's symmetry and stability, especially given the weight of the central dome, which would rest directly above the tomb chamber at the platform's center. To distribute weight further, the central core of the Taj Mahal was designed with internal load-bearing walls, thick, interconnected masonry walls that funneled the load downward toward the foundation. Unlike European Gothic structures, which relied on flying buttresses, Mughal buildings used mass and proportion to manage stress. The Taj Mahal's walls are not merely decorative, they are integral to holding up the entire edifice. Then came the challenge of moisture. The Yamuna's proximity meant that water infiltration was a constant concern. The engineers built a network of subsurface drainage systems, including hidden channels and sloped surfaces that carried water away from the foundation. Lime mortar and stone were layered in ways that prevented water from pooling and damaging the base. There are even theories suggesting that waterproofing agents, like natural resins or tamarind-based compounds, were mixed into the mortar. But the most impressive and little-known aspect of the Taj Mahal's foundation lies in its adaptability. The builders understood that perfection in nature does not mean rigidity, it means resilience. So they built flexibility into the foundation. The minarets, for example, were tilted slightly outward by a fraction of a degree, so that if an earthquake occurred, they would fall away from the main dome, sparing the central structure from damage. This principle of deliberate imperfection for structural safety is a hallmark of advanced engineering. It shows that the Taj Mahal is not only a vision of paradise, but a triumph of practicality. The construction of the foundation took several years, not just because of its complexity, but because everything depended on its precision. Unlike modern times, there were no cranes or computer models. Surveying was done by eye. Weight estimates were calculated from experience, and success rested on intuition, honed through generations of craftsmanship. The materials used in the foundation were as deliberate as those in the visible superstructure. Engineers employed a mix of stone blocks, compacted clay, lime mortar, iron dowels, and timber. Though iron was used sparingly to prevent rust in humid conditions, it was critical in areas where tensile strength was required. Timber, often considered an unusual material for foundation work, was used in submerged layers where constant water saturation prevented it from decaying, a strategy still used in parts of Venice and Amsterdam. There are even legends, passed down through oral history, that suggest the use of hidden chambers or vaults beneath the foundation, designed either to distribute weight or to contain ceremonial elements. While no conclusive archaeological evidence has confirmed these, the mystery only adds to the Taj Mahal's aura as both a technical and spiritual masterpiece. The central dome, perhaps the most iconic element of the Taj Mahal, also posed its own engineering challenge. Weighing approximately 12,000 tons, it required a base capable of withstanding enormous vertical and lateral forces. The dome rests atop an octagonal drum, reinforced by thick internal walls and buttressing towers. The engineers employed techniques similar to squinches and pendentives, transitioning the square base of the tomb chamber into the circular base of the dome. These transitions were reinforced with internal ribs and concealed tension relief channels. Even the placement of the tomb chamber, below the dome, aligned precisely on the vertical axis of the foundation, reflects a commitment to equilibrium. The cenotaphs above are symbolic. The actual graves of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal lie in a plain crypt beneath, their resting place marked with simplicity in contrast to the grandeur above. And yet, even here, the alignment is perfect, down to the last inch. All of these decisions were made not merely to hold up stone, but to hold up time, and they worked. Despite centuries of environmental change, seismic activity, and human impact, the Taj Mahal remains structurally sound. Minor repairs have been made, but the foundation has never shifted, never cracked, and never faltered. The builders, without modern science, achieved something that even today would be difficult to replicate: a colossal, harmonious structure resting on soft earth, forever poised, yet unshaken. What makes this accomplishment even more profound is its invisibility. The average visitor to the Taj Mahal never sees the foundation, never knows of the wells, chambers, drainage systems, or angled minarets. They see only the marble, the light, the symmetry. But it is what lies beneath, the engineering invisible to the eye, that allows the illusion of weightlessness, of stillness, of eternity. In the end, the foundation of the Taj Mahal reminds us that greatness is not only what is seen above the surface. True permanence, whether in stone or in life, depends on what is built beneath. As the foundation settled into the earth and the platform rose along the river's edge, a new phase began, the ascent of marble into the sky. The building of the Taj Mahal's central mausoleum, its dome, and the iconic minarets. was an extraordinary feat of vertical construction. It was here, amid scaffolds and stone, that the dream of Shah Jahan began to take its most visible form. The white Makrana marble, now shaped and polished, began arriving by the ton. It came in huge blocks and thin sheets, in carved panels and blank slabs, each tagged, measured, and recorded. Workmen organized the material at staging areas across the construction site, often under the command of foremen specialized in the handling of marble alone. At any given time, the area around the Taj was buzzing with the movement of cranes, pulleys, hoists, and human labor. Unlike modern high-rises, the Taj Mahal was built entirely without steel reinforcements or powered machinery. Instead, the Mughals devised a sophisticated system of scaffolding, ramps, levers, and counterweights to move and place materials. The scaffolding, made primarily from bamboo and deodar wood, was often so extensive that it resembled a building in itself. Some parts of the scaffold were reinforced with brick to support heavier loads, especially around the main dome. For vertical transport, engineers constructed an earthen ramp nearly 1.5 kilometers long, spiraling gently upward around the mausoleum. This allowed elephants, oxen, and teams of laborers to haul marble blocks to the upper stories. The ramps were constantly maintained, widened, or rebuilt as the structure rose. Temporary pulley systems with human-powered winches were used to raise smaller loads. Calligraphic panels, lattice screens, and carved inlay work. The construction began with the walls of the tomb chamber, thick, load-bearing structures designed not just for enclosure, but for balance. These walls, laid with massive marble blocks, fitted with near-perfect precision, were built in segments. After each layer, time was allowed for settling and alignment before the next was placed. This deliberate pace ensured not only vertical accuracy, but also dimensional symmetry, which was critical to the entire structure's harmony. Once the chamber reached its desired height, arches were inserted. The iconic Mughal four-centered arch, slightly pointed but wide, elegant and structurally sound. The main entrances to the tomb chamber were surrounded with elaborate calligraphy, created with black marble inlaid into white. These verses from the Quran served as spiritual welcome and architectural frame. Above the main walls rose the drum, or octagonal base of the dome. The transition from square floor plan to circular dome required technical mastery. Builders used a combination of corbelling techniques and squinches to gradually curve the space, distributing the eventual weight of the dome evenly across all sides. Every stone was cut and shaped to interlock with the next, forming a seamless rising ring that would cradle the great dome. The dome itself, perhaps the most recognizable feature of the Taj Mahal, posed its own challenge. Estimated to weigh over 12,000 tons, it had to be lifted stone by stone, each precisely angled to contribute to the structural integrity. The outer dome is what most people see, a bulbous, Persian-influenced structure rising with grace. But hidden inside is a second, inner dome, smaller and shaped to provide ideal acoustics and proportional harmony within the tomb chamber. Between these two domes is a hollow chamber, reducing the overall weight and allowing for air circulation. This double dome system was not only practical, but symbolic, allowing the inner spiritual space to remain serene and intimate, while the outer dome announced grandeur to the world. Crowning the dome is a finial, originally made of gold and later replaced with a gilded bronze version. This finial is not merely decorative. It contains a crescent moon and spire, combining both Islamic and Hindu design motifs, a subtle acknowledgement of India's cultural syncretism. As the dome was being completed, work also began on the 4 minarets that frame the platform at each corner. Rising to about 40 meters, these minarets were not only aesthetic bookends, but also subtle engineering features. Each one was built with a slight outward tilt, barely perceptible to the naked eye, so that in the event of an earthquake or collapse, they would fall away from the mausoleum rather than onto it. This shows the Mughal builders' profound understanding of disaster mitigation. The minarets were constructed in segmented stages, each with its own circular staircase. Every level included a small balcony supported by intricately carved brackets, allowing for both ornamental and functional access. At the top of each minaret was a chhatri, a small domed pavilion, capped with a lotus motif. These chhatris echoed the dome's form and balanced the vertical profile of the structure. Simultaneously, while stone rose vertically, artists and artisans moved in horizontally. Interior walls were covered with pietra dura inlay, floral carvings, and intricate jali screens. Each jali, or lattice window, was carved from a single slab of marble, allowing light to enter the tomb chamber in delicate filtered rays, creating a sense of divine tranquility. Artisans worked in rotating shifts. Calligraphers followed masons, who were then followed by inlay workers, and finally polishers. Each layer of work depended on the last, and a single miscalculation could delay entire sections. Supervisors, often trained in both mathematics and artistry, oversaw progress and ensured fidelity to the master design. One of the most sacred spaces, the cenotaph chamber, was constructed with special care. Though the actual graves of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal lie in a crypt below, their cenotaphs, elevated replicas, were placed in the upper chamber. These cenotaphs are adorned with fine carvings, inscriptions of the 99 names of God, and surrounded by marble screens so finely perforated that light dances across them like lace. Above, the dome acts like an acoustic amplifier. Even the faintest whisper from one corner of the chamber can be heard clearly across the space, giving the tomb a sense of profound stillness. This was not accidental. It was designed to create a meditative environment, one of prayer and eternity. As the final blocks were placed, the Taj Mahal's central mausoleum was complete, a perfect expression of balance, harmony, and transcendence. But it was not just a tomb. It was a visual symphony. From every angle, the structure reveals itself anew. The play of light and shadow, the reflections in the water, the contrast of white marble against the red sandstone of the surrounding buildings. It is a monument that does not simply sit in space, it commands it. And yet, despite the enormous effort, it was completed in just over 8 years. A monument of this scale, constructed without modern machinery, remains one of history's most efficient architectural achievements. Every step, every stone, every measurement was guided by an ideal, not just to honor a queen, but to create a gateway to eternity. To view the Taj Mahal only as an architectural marvel is to see only half the story. Its true genius lies not just in stone and proportion, but in the layers of meaning and message inscribed into its every surface. Calligraphy, light, Geometry and symbolism were not afterthoughts. They were the language of the building itself, and together they form a silent dialogue between the earthly and the eternal. From the moment a visitor passes through the grand red sandstone gateway, the presence of calligraphy becomes unmistakable. Towering letters, gracefully curving down arched entrances, spell out verses from the Quran, framing each doorway like portals to the divine. These are not merely inscriptions, they are prayers, reminders, and guides. They speak of paradise, of mercy, of judgment, and of the eternal soul. The man behind this silent script was Amanat Khan Shirazi, a master calligrapher from Persia, invited to the Mughal court by Shah Jahan himself. Amanat Khan's work on the Taj Mahal was so revered that his name alone was allowed to appear on the monument, carved near the base of one of the entrances. A rare honor, and one that speaks to the spiritual authority of his contribution. His script, executed in black marble inlay, contrasts sharply and beautifully against the white Makrana marble. The style is thuluth, a fluid, elegant script that balances decorative flourish with clarity. But there's more than beauty here. There's science. The calligraphy increases in size the higher it goes, so that from the ground it appears perfectly proportioned. This is optical correction, an early example of adjusting art for human perception. The Quranic verses themselves were selected with deep care. Most revolve around themes of paradise, divine justice, and resurrection, the very core of Islamic eschatology. They serve a dual purpose, honoring Taj Mahal with invocations of peace and heaven, and reminding every visitor of their own mortality and the promise of what lies beyond. But the Taj Mahal speaks not only in text, it speaks in light. Perhaps the most astonishing feature of the mausoleum is how it changes with the day. At dawn, the white marble blushes pink as the first light touches its surface. At midday, it shines bright white against the blue sky. At sunset, it glows golden, and under the moon, it gleams silver, almost translucent. The building behaves like a canvas for the sun and sky, altering its mood and tone with the hours, the seasons, even the weather. This relationship with light is intentional. The marble used was selected for its translucency, its ability to absorb and softly refract light. The domes and walls are slightly curved, allowing light to fall in arcs and gradients, not just flatly. Inlay work, carved in stones like jade, lapis, and carnelian, catch the sunlight and shimmer, appearing to come alive as one walks past them. Inside, the central chamber is dim, quiet, cool. Light enters through jali screens, marble lattices so finely pierced they resemble lace. These screens filter daylight into soft geometric patterns, casting shapes on the floor that move as the sun travels. At times, it feels as though the space is not lit at all, but rather glowing from within. This manipulation of light creates spiritual atmosphere. The goal was not brightness, but serenity. The muted tones invite reflection. The changing hues echo the transience of life, the passage of time. In every shadow is a reminder that this world, like the building itself, is both material and ephemeral. But the Taj Mahal does more than please the eye or inspire emotion. It symbolizes entire philosophies in stone. Take, for example, its geometrical symmetry. The entire complex is laid out along a central axis, with the mausoleum at one end and the gateway at the other, all balanced by identical structures. A mosque on the west, a jawab on the east, minarets on each corner. Even the trees and water channels in the gardens follow mirrored lines. This isn't simply for visual harmony, it's an architectural reflection of divine order. In Islamic tradition, symmetry represents Tawheed, the oneness and unity of God. Everything is paired, balanced, and flowing toward a central truth. The very act of walking through the Taj Mahal is a journey through this philosophy. As one progresses from the bustling world outside to the quiet tomb chamber, the symmetry draws the soul inward toward focus and peace. Then there's the use of circles and octagons. The central chamber is an octagon, a shape that in Islamic architecture often symbolizes the connection between heaven and earth. The 8 sides serve as a transition from the square base, symbolizing the earthly realm, to the circular dome, representing the sky or the divine. It is, quite literally, a bridge between 2 planes of existence. The dome itself is more than a structure. It is a cosmic metaphor. In Islamic cosmology, the sky is often envisioned as a great dome covering the earth. The Taj Mahal's dome, with its perfect curvature and towering height, mimics this celestial idea. It sits not just atop a tomb, but above an axis mundi, a spiritual center. Even the decorative motifs carry meaning. The inlaid floral patterns that bloom across the walls, tulips, lilies, irises, are not random. Many of these flowers appear in descriptions of paradise in Islamic literature. They are not just beautiful, they are symbolic invitations to the garden of eternity. The use of pietra dura to render these motifs in color against white marble gives them an otherworldly feel, as though the garden itself is suspended in time. The use of numbers in the design is also deliberate. Repetition of specific numbers, particularly 8, 4, and 2, can be found throughout the complex, numbers that hold theological and mystical significance in Islamic thought. The 8 paradises, the 4 rivers of heaven, the dualities of life and death, all are encoded in the very measurements of the space. In this way, the Taj Mahal is not just a building, it is a text, a poem, a meditation. It does not shout its symbolism, it whispers it, layer by layer. To those who know how to listen, it speaks of love, unity, transcendence, and the eternal presence of the divine in every detail. It's this layering of experience, visual, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, that gives the Taj Mahal its singular power. Many buildings impress, a few inspire, but the Taj Mahal, through its use of light, calligraphy, symmetry, and stone, achieves something few monuments ever do. It transcends time, and in doing so, it fulfills Shah Jahan's deepest intention, not simply to preserve the memory of a beloved wife, but to create a gateway to eternity, a structure that reflects the beauty of the soul and the impermanence of the body. In the soft glow of dusk, when the marble begins to blur with the mist of the Yamuna, one begins to understand. This is not merely a tomb, it is a metaphor in marble, and its language is eternal. While the white marble mausoleum of the Taj Mahal often commands all the attention, one cannot grasp the full scope of its meaning without stepping into its garden. Stretching out in lush symmetry from the base of the tomb to the grand sandstone gateway is a landscape unlike any other, a masterful realization of the Chaba, or 4-part Persian garden. But this is not just landscaping. This garden is a sacred geometry, a mirror of paradise on earth. In the cosmology of the Islamic world, the garden is more than a restful space. It is an emblem of Jannah, the eternal garden of the afterlife described in the Quran. For Shah Jahan, recreating this celestial realm for his beloved was not a poetic gesture, it was a promise kept. The Kaaba is an ancient garden form introduced to India by the Mughals from Persia and Central Asia. Based on Quranic descriptions of paradise, it divides space into four symmetrical quadrants, typically separated by walkways and water channels, often aligned to the cardinal directions. These divisions are not merely aesthetic. They are symbolic representations of the four rivers said to flow in paradise, rivers of water, milk, wine, and honey. The Kaaba of the Taj Mahal, however, breaks from Mughal tradition in one important way. In most earlier Mughal tomb complexes, such as Humayun's tomb in Delhi, the mausoleum is placed at the center of the garden, encircled by nature. But in the Taj Mahal, the tomb sits at the northern end, with the garden stretching out in front of it. Why this divergence? One theory is practical. The river Yamuna borders the northern edge, and placing the tomb near the river enhances its reflection in the water, heightening its mystical aura. Another theory is spiritual. The river itself is treated as a celestial boundary, beyond which lies the afterlife. Thus, the Taj Mahal is placed at the threshold of paradise, with the garden serving as a transition from the world of the living to the world of the eternal. As visitors walk through the main southern gateway, the entire garden unfolds in an orchestrated sequence of revelation. The first glimpse of the white dome, perfectly framed by the gateway's arch, is a visual crescendo. Then the space opens, and the senses are enveloped in symmetry, greenery, and serenity. The garden's layout is based on a grid system, with pathways, kiabans, intersecting at right angles, dividing the area into 16 sunken flower beds, each surrounded by low borders. In the center of this cross formation lies a raised marble platform with a large reflecting pool, the hawse, aligned precisely along the central axis of the mausoleum. Water is the central theme of the garden, just as it is in the Quranic vision of paradise. From the central pool, 4 narrow water channels radiate outward in the 4 cardinal directions, lined with fountains that create a gentle, ever-present soundscape. These channels reflect the structure above and mirror the heavens, symbolizing purity, abundance, and divine favor. The entire hydraulic system was a marvel of Mughal engineering. Water was drawn from the Yamuna using a series of wells, aqueducts, and storage tanks, then distributed through underground clay pipes and copper conduits. Gravity and siphon techniques ensured constant flow, and excess water was channeled out carefully to maintain balance and prevent flooding. For a garden so rich in symbolism, the precision of its irrigation was equally essential. Paradise, after all, must not fail in function. As for the plant life, it too was selected not just for beauty, but for meaning. Cypress trees, tall and slender, were planted to represent death and eternity. Their dark green silhouette offered a visual contrast to the flowering trees and low shrubs. Between them, fruit-bearing trees, such as mango, pomegranate, and date palm, symbolized life, renewal, and abundance. Flowering plants were chosen for fragrance and color: jasmine, rose, tulip, and narcissus, each blooming in cycles throughout the year to ensure that the garden always offered a sensory reward. Visitors to the Taj Mahal today may not realize how carefully these selections were made. Each plant was chosen to echo either a line from Persian poetry, a passage from the Quran, or a motif found in the inlay of the marble. The experience of walking through the garden was meant to be spiritual, even meditative, a process of preparation before reaching the tomb itself. In the early mornings, when dew collects on petals and the river mist clings to the grass, the garden feels suspended in time. Birds sing from hidden branches. Light filters through the leaves and reflects off water channels in shards of gold. It is easy to forget the world outside. This is intentional. The Mughal conception of paradise was not an escape from reality, but a refinement of it. The garden was to be an earthly hint of what was to come in the hereafter. To walk through it was to move closer to divine presence. And when one finally stood before the tomb, the journey, both literal and symbolic, was complete. The layout of the garden also influenced the psychological rhythm of the space. The long central axis encouraged a slow, contemplative walk. The pathways were wide enough for imperial processions, yet narrow enough to feel intimate. Resting pavilions and benches were placed at key points, encouraging pause and reflection. For Shah Jahan and the royal family, these spaces were used for prayer, poetry recitation, and moments of solitude. For the architects, they were structural punctuation marks in a grand sentence of symmetry. Beyond the central garden and tomb lie the ancillary buildings, the red sandstone mosque to the west, used for Friday prayers, and the Jawab on the east, a mirror image structure included purely to maintain architectural balance. These buildings not only frame the monument, they anchor it in religious and cultural context. Facing Mecca, the mosque reinforces the sanctity of the site, while the Jawab reflects the philosophy of symmetry, even when practical function is absent. Taken together, the entire complex is a spatial manuscript, each section a verse, each quadrant a stanza. The garden is not merely foreground, it is part of the poem. Over the centuries, colonial influence and changing climate have altered aspects of the garden. Some original plant species were lost, and the British, during the 19th century, redesigned parts of the Charbagh to resemble English-style lawns. While these changes made the garden more European in appearance, efforts in recent decades have sought to restore the original Mughal vision, guided by archaeological records, paintings, and travel accounts. Still, the spirit of the garden remains intact. It continues to offer what it always has, a space to slow down, to reflect, to imagine. It is not merely beautiful, it is purposeful. The Taj Mahal's garden teaches us that architecture does not end at the walls. It extends into air, water, soil, and time. It shapes how we feel, how we move, how we think. The Charbagh is not decoration, it is revelation. It is the pause before the sacred. It is the breath before the prayer. And in that green, fragrant, flowing symmetry, we see not just a garden, but eternity, rendered in leaves and light. If the Taj Mahal stands today as a monument to love and eternity, it is equally a testament to the hands and hearts of the thousands who built it. Behind every carved petal, beneath every polished surface, and within every whispered echo of its marble halls, lie the unseen imprints of the men and a few women who gave their lives, their labor, and their genius to its creation. It is easy to remember emperors, Their names are etched into chronicles, their portraits painted, their legacies recorded. But the artisans, labourers, stonecutters, scaffold builders, and calligraphers, these are the souls whose names are seldom known, though their contributions endure in every line and curve of the Taj. Historical records estimate that between 20,000 and 25,000 workers were employed in the construction of the Taj Mahal. They came from across the vast Mughal Empire and beyond: India, Persia, Central Asia, the Ottoman lands, even parts of Europe. They represented dozens of trades and crafts, many of them passed down through families for generations. For some, working on the Taj would be the crowning achievement of their career. For others, it was their life's labor. These workers lived not in scattered camps, but in a purpose-built city, created solely to support the construction. Known as Mumtazabad, this city within a city contained artisan quarters, workshops, food stalls, water wells, and mosques. It had markets for goods and materials, schools for apprentices, and temporary housing for engineers, overseers, and skilled foreigners. Each trade had its own guild, overseen by a master craftsman responsible for quality control and coordination. The guilds were organized with military precision: masons, trained to cut and shape stone with geometric accuracy; carvers, who transformed blank marble into vines, leaves, and floral motifs; calligraphers, with steady hands and trained eyes, who chiseled sacred texts into hard stone; pietra dura, inlay specialists, who embedded semi-precious stones into marble, like setting stars into the night sky. The work was grueling. Days began at dawn and extended well into the evening. In the summer months, temperatures in Agra could soar above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and yet the labor continued. Stonecutters labored with hammer and chisel in open yards. Elephant handlers directed the transport of marble slabs along ramps. Scaffold workers, high above the ground, maneuvered beams and blocks with no safety harnesses, only balance and nerve. But this was not merely manual labor. It was sacred craftsmanship. Each artisan understood that this structure was more than a palace or mosque. It was a tomb, a place of mourning, a monument of faith. Many recited verses from the Quran before beginning work each day. Others offered silent prayers before lifting tools. The process was infused with reverence. Mistakes were not tolerated, not out of fear of punishment, but out of devotion to perfection. Wages varied by skill and rank. Master artisans were paid handsomely and treated with honor. Their reputations were known across empires, and some traveled from as far as Baghdad, Bukhara, and Shiraz. Their families were often housed in special quarters, and they were given access to royal physicians and imperial supplies. Apprentices and laborers earned less, often paid in daily wages or food rations. But even among these ranks, the work carried prestige. To be part of the Taj Mahal project was to be part of something eternal. It was a badge of pride that would be passed down through family lines. My grandfather worked on the southern minaret, one might say. My mother carved jali screens near the cenotaph. Yes, women too were part of the effort. While the records are sparse, oral histories suggest that women were employed in some fine carving, inlay polishing, and mosaic work, particularly on floral and decorative elements. Their contributions, though unrecorded in court chronicles, remain visible in the delicate balance of the Taj's ornamentation. To keep this massive workforce healthy, the Mughal administration established hospitals and mobile clinics at the site. Clean water was transported daily from the Yamuna, filtered and stored in large clay cisterns. Herbal medicines, Ayurvedic treatments, and Unani medical practices were made available by court-appointed healers. Food was cooked in communal kitchens. Grains, lentils, vegetables, and meats were brought in by cart each morning. At the end of each day, workers gathered under shaded pavilions to eat, to rest, and to share stories. For many, the friendships formed here were lifelong bonds. As the years passed and the monument began to rise, a sense of communal pride grew among the workers. They were no longer just building for Shah Jahan, they were building for history. Each element completed was not merely a job done, but a legacy sealed. Craftsmen developed a silent language of coordination. One carved line told the next how deep to cut. A tiny marker in a jaili panel might signal a section finished by a particular hand. Over time, the project evolved into an ecosystem of efficiency, collaboration, and shared reverence. One cannot ignore, however, the cost of such perfection. Accidents were inevitable. The great heights, the heavy materials, the primitive lifting techniques all posed constant dangers. Injuries and deaths, though not well documented, surely occurred. But to the empire, and even to many workers, these sacrifices were seen not as tragedy, but as the price of immortality. They believed that their labor would live on long after they were gone. Today, the echoes of their presence remain, in the imperfect curvature of a petal, in the barely visible fingerprint on a carved lotus, in the worn indentations on a step where generations of visitors have walked. These are not flaws. They are the soul of the Taj Mahal, the human dimension that breathes life into stone. No machine built the Taj Mahal. No algorithm could have carved its arabesques. It was people, skilled, sweating, dreaming people, who raised it, one block at a time, in the blistering sun and under the glow of moonlight. The Taj Mahal is often called a monument to love, and rightly so, but it is also a monument to labor, to craftsmanship, to the collective genius of humanity when inspired by beauty, purpose, and something greater than itself. Every structure has a cost, but few were built with such devotion, precision, and soul. Long after the last marble inlay was polished, after the scaffolds were dismantled, and the last artisan left the grounds of Mumtazabad, the Taj Mahal remained, not just as a mausoleum, but as a symbol. As empires rose and fell, revolutions raged, and centuries passed, the Taj endured. Its endurance is not simply physical, it is cultural, emotional, and spiritual. The story of the Taj Mahal did not end with Shah Jahan. In fact, its second chapter began with his own downfall. In 1658, just years after the mausoleum was completed, Shah Jahan was overthrown by his own son, Aurangzeb, and imprisoned in the Agra fort, a few kilometers upriver. From the Musamman Burj, a small tower with a marble balcony, the aging emperor could gaze at the Taj Mahal, the resting place of his beloved for the remainder of his life. He died in 1666 and was buried beside Mumtaz Mahal in the crypt below the tomb chamber, his final wish fulfilled in silence. From that point forward, the Taj Mahal entered a new phase, as both a tomb and a relic of the golden age of the Mughals. It remained untouched for generations, revered and maintained as a sacred site. But as Mughal power declined and colonial ambitions swept across India, the Taj faced new threats. Threats not from time or nature, but from human hands. During the 18th century, the monument fell into neglect. Local rulers plundered the complex, removing silver doors, precious carpets, and jewels from the cenotaphs. The British East India Company, while expanding its control over the subcontinent, treated the Taj alternately as a quarry, a barracks, and a curiosity. Soldiers were housed within the gardens, camels grazed in the pathways, graffiti appeared on the marble walls. By the early 19th century, it seemed the Taj Mahal might fall to the same fate as so many ancient structures, disrepair and erosion by indifference. But then, something unexpected happened. Romance intervened. British officers, artists and poets, many influenced by the aesthetic ideals of the Romantic era, began to see the Taj not just as a ruin, but as a sublime expression of eternal love. Watercolor paintings circulated in England, poetry was written in its honor, and the monument began to capture the Western imagination. Travelers likened it to a tear suspended on the cheek of time, a phrase often misattributed to Rabindranath Tagore, but nevertheless reflective of its new image. Under British rule, particularly during the tenure of Lord Curzon, the Viceroy of India, from 1899 to 1905, a massive restoration effort was undertaken. The gardens were re-landscaped, the marble cleaned, and damaged sections repaired. While some changes, such as the introduction of English-style lawns, altered the original Mughal aesthetic, the effort helped rescue the Taj Mahal from further decay. In 1947, as India gained independence, the Taj Mahal stood not only as a symbol of the Mughal past, but as a symbol of India itself. It had transcended its imperial origins. It belonged now to all people, all faiths, all hearts that had ever mourned, or loved, or dreamed of something beautiful. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983, praised as the jewel of Muslim art in India, and one of the universally admired masterpieces of the world's heritage. Millions visited it each year. Films, songs, novels, and advertisements used it as backdrop and metaphor. Lovers proposed before it. Pilgrims wept within it. Artists tried to capture it. None ever quite succeeded, because the Taj Mahal is not just something to be seen, it is something to be felt. Yet, like all masterpieces, the Taj Mahal remains vulnerable. The greatest threats today come not from invading armies, but from environmental decay. Air pollution from nearby industries and vehicle traffic has begun to yellow the marble, once described as the color of milk. Acid rain erodes its fine carvings. The Yamuna River, once the Taj's mirrored partner, has receded in places due to water diversion and climate change, exposing the monument's foundation to potential stress. Efforts are ongoing. The Indian government has implemented pollution control zones, restricted vehicle access, and initiated scientific cleaning programs using clay packs to restore the marble's brightness. International organizations, engineers, and conservationists work tirelessly to maintain the structure's integrity. Laser scanning and digital modeling are used to track its condition. Yet the challenge is immense. For a monument built in the age of elephants and hand tools, the modern world presents unfamiliar dangers. Still, it stands. And not just in India. The image of the Taj Mahal is now embedded in the collective consciousness of humanity. It is evoked Whenever someone speaks of timeless love, of purity, of lost beauty, it appears in everything from architectural textbooks to wedding invitation cards, from Bollywood epics to Hollywood dreams. It is one of the most photographed and recognized monuments in the world. But despite the flood of images, despite the thousands of daily visitors, there remains a quality to the Taj Mahal that cannot be captured, a stillness, a breath, a presence. Those who visit often describe a strange hush, a quiet awe that falls upon them as they pass through the garden, as they approach the mausoleum, as they stand beneath the dome. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of understanding, that this place was made not for power, not for glory, but for something profoundly human: love, loss, memory, eternity. These are the materials of the Taj Mahal. Marble is just the skin. Its legacy lies not in its height or size, or even in its architectural perfection. It lies in its emotional perfection, its ability to transcend centuries, cultures, and languages, and to remind us of what it means to mourn deeply, to love truly, and to hope for something that outlasts us. As the sun sets over the Yamuna and the dome catches its final golden glow, the Taj Mahal doesn't simply reflect the light, it becomes light, a beacon not to the heavens, but to the human heart, a tomb that breathes, a poem in stone, a dream that dared to be built and was forever.